me? Can you see me? I hope you can see me, 'cause I can't see very good with my new eyes, my new alien eyes. Anyways, welcome to the show, everybody. I hope you're having a good evening, and I hope you enjoy the stream, because we have a very interesting stream tonight. Alright, let's start the show.
The search for new life forms extends to the invisible edge of the universe. It is a quest to solve the greatest mystery of all. Are we alone?
With intelligent life. These scientists concluded that there are probably 40 to 50 million intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations in our galaxy alone. There is ever-increasing evidence that some of these extraterrestrial civilizations are visiting the Earth. You are seeing an unidentified flying object. It is not a hoax. It is real. The film was taken.
Nearest stars to the edge of the Milky Way. Plunging into the swirling vortex of a massive black hole, you'll make your way to the very edge of the universe and beyond.
Were considered hoaxes or hallucinations. Yet more than 15 million witnesses, equipped with photographs, movies, videos, physical records, and scientific data, have proven again that man can be wrong.
To infinity, the ultimate voyage.
Most people today envision UFOs to be exactly as they are portrayed in most science fiction films and books. This is, of course, a relatively recent conception that has been stimulated, perhaps, by our expanding knowledge of outer space. But strange sights appeared in the skies long before spaceflight or manned flight of any kind was possible. And in each century, these visions took on identities that tell much about the worldview of those who saw them. His army, for instance, were harassed by a pair of flying objects in 329 BC. Most of the soldiers fled the scene, but some...
Its height is estimated at between 6 and 8 feet. Its weight between 280 and 700 pounds. The Indians of the Northwest call the creature Sasquatch. We call it Bigfoot.
People sometimes ask, could a Bigfoot track simply be a big human foot? And the answer is quite simply
to a French token minted in the 1860s.
Differences between the two. For example,
Sightings are on the rise.
Just like it was sliding through the sky, and it tilted like it was looking down at us.
It was a bright light that dimmed down to a white speck.
Ordinary people Astronauts, cosmonauts, even former presidents have all seen extraordinary craft doing extraordinary things.
I happened to glance out one time, and there against the black sky was a white object at about a 45-degree angle.
From the historic crash in Roswell, New Mexico, to unprecedented mass sightings going...
Porthole windows and brilliant searchlights, which it directed at the ground.
We are not alone.
In 1970, what may have been the largest crowd ever to witness a UFO occurred in Fatima, Portugal. 50,000 people watched in amazement as a huge silver disc began spinning like a windmill and dancing about in the sky. After plunging toward the Earth, it climbed back into the sky and disappeared into the sun. One night during the summer of 1948, Clyde W. Tombaugh discovered the planet Pluto was sitting in the back of his home. He and several witnesses, including other members of his family, watched a strange glowing craft move overhead. All of the witnesses agreed.
This next picture was taken near Rouen, France, by a French military pilot 4 years, 6,000 miles away. Same shape, same hood ornament, obviously rented.
Reported UFO sightings over Germany. They appeared out of nowhere and seemed to be toying with the aircraft. Military pilots termed them Foo Fighters, Foo being the French word for fire. Retired Air Force describes an encounter with his crew over Japan.
My crew saw was an orange
yet to be discovered. Planets unnamed and
craft were miles and miles off the left.
Taken from inside the van, but through the side door window. This is Santa Ana, California. 3 years later, in 7th...
Now you will see the Colorado film at its original speed 5 times in rapid succession.
Michael Collins, extravehicular activities, saw Venus rising as the sun was about to come up and thought it was his target satellite. Asked the ground if the satellite it was Venus. There was even a case where a man, before the UFO phenomenon began, a train conductor
Strangest of all these fierce and fabled
identified experimental aircraft.
Holy cow!
To answer these questions, we have to look back at the history of UFO sightings. Cave art in Australia and the western United States painted at least 5,000 years.
A sense of direction. Ordered the squadron to head due west. The leader, with alarm in his voice, then said, "We don't know which way is west. Everything is wrong, strange. We can't be sure of any direction."
Years before technology made flight possible. The modern age of UFOs began in 1947. Ex-military pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying his plane over the Cascade
All
Mountain
5
range.
planes disappeared
He encountered
without
several
leaving
objects
a trace.
traveling at an extreme rate of speed.
A giant Martin Mariner with a crew of 13 was dispatched to search.
Greeks began to go east toward China over these caravan routes to trade for gold. They brought back more and more reports.
The ancient nomads mined for gold in a region rich with fossil remains of dinosaurs. Centuries later, when fossil hunters
flew as if it wanted us to see it. Indeed, the message is obvious as long as you're standing directly underneath it. Brought down to earth, the mystery is solved. Because the lights resemble common notions of what a flying saucer should look like, imagination and misperception combine to create the appearance of a UFO.
When the lights were suddenly turned off on the sign, the witnesses concluded falsely that it shot off along their line of vision.
Reported by one of the witnesses, President Jimmy Carter, while governor of Georgia. It could not have been a planet, a star, meteor, or aircraft.
At that time, direction, with a message for a new...
Overwhelming evidence that some are extra.
The president, we were told by various witnesses, it makes you realize that there's a powerful UFO mythology per...
A professional photographer.
Straight that we're dealing with a cosmic watergate.
Physical year.
Warminster, England has been a mecca for UFO spotters for years. And one night in 1970, this photograph was taken there. It distinctly showed a UFO hovering above a nearby hill. The incident created some excitement. It was extensively reported by UFO buffs, and the photograph was consistently confirmed as genuine. There is nothing about these photographs which suggests to me that they have been faked in any way. Even an eminent French scientist, Pierre...
Parts of Brazil and on the other side of the world.
And that's what had me convinced to go ahead and put it in the paper right away.
That night, a purple spotlight powered by a car battery. The hoax was staged in order to study the rigor with which UFO enthusiasts investigate their reports. The light was seen by the UFO, and one of them appeared to take a couple of photographs.
That might contain life.
As I believe, there's a society of these groups, not just one. There are probably very many. If there's only one, we have no hope of finding them. There are probably thousands, maybe as many as 1 million.
When we speak of life beyond Earth, what we generally mean is, of course, intelligent life, something resembling our noble selves. It is highly probable that there are such intelligent forms of life in other galaxies in the universe. And it is even more probable that many of these forms are vastly more intelligent than we.
I'd like to quote a short passage from a recent report of the Astronomy Survey Committee of the prestigious and august National Academy of Sciences of the United States, probably the nation's most distinguished scientific body. This was printed in May of this year. Quote, "Each passing year has seen our estimate of the probability of life in space increase, along with our capabilities of detecting it. More and more scientists feel that contact with other civilizations is no longer something beyond our dreams, but is a natural event in the history of mankind."
The dream of this so-called natural event began on October 12, 1992, when NASA's SETI program, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, began a 10-year, $100 million project whose sole purpose is to seek the answer to a single question: is man alone in the universe? The centerpiece of the SETI program is the
pushed into the
Roswell Base Commander, Brigadier General.
Its 1,000-foot-wide antenna dish makes it the most
different position. In addition,
sitting on
in some photographs and off in others, proving that the photos were taken on different nights. There was generally a lot
base. It took
in the investigation.
For us to maintain the B-29s, just to support them flying in the Arctic. I even had one crew describe one that they saw underwater that surfaced, rose off the water, and flew away. Now, this clearly exceeded any design capabilities that we knew of in the world. The B-29s flying these reconnaissance missions were equipped with a variety of cameras. At various times, they got pictures of these UFOs seen in the Arctic airspace on various of the cameras, and sometimes on all of the cameras. At least this is what they reported. I never got to see any of it because we took the film cartridges out, packed it in the box, and shipped it off to Washington, to Andrews Air Force Base, where the officer was met by Pentagon intelligence and taken someplace. I never got any feedback on any of this. I never heard what they developed out of it.
To the right, coming in the vicinity of Mount Baker, a whole chain-like string of of aircraft coming at a tremendous speed. I could see plainly that they didn't have any tails. I had never seen aircraft of that kind, and I made a quick judgment that they must be approximately 100 foot in their wingspan. And the first unit
continues to this day. In 1934,
Dad was kind of right about here. He was sitting like this. My Uncle Ted was standing more over here, kind of leaned.
Thought I'd try to clock their speed between Mount Rainier and Mount Adams.
Arnold estimated the speed of the craft at an astounding 1,700 miles per hour, nearly 3 times faster than any jet he had ever heard of. He was asked by a reporter to describe the mysterious objects.
You know, they would skip and sail and give off these flashes, and you take a saucer and you skip it across the water, and it's erratic, and this is how the name flying saucer was born.
This was the day, June 24th, 1947, that marked the beginning of what is known as the modern flying saucer era. What followed would be thousands upon thousands of unidentified flying objects over North America as well as other parts of the world.
It seemed to hover for a matter of maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and then was out of sight within 2 or 3 seconds, which was a lot faster than it had been traveling originally.
We were using our red lights and our aircraft landing lights, which is a spotlight, and pointing them or directing them at the UFO, and it was reacting to it audibly on occasion, and it did make a movement towards the lights. As we turned the light off, then it would return to its original position and remain stationary again, but it was reactive to the lights.
I judged it to be at least 150 feet across it. It was saucer-shaped with a high dome. It was very shiny under the...
Dozens of people pointed their video cameras to the skies.
Exactly at the time of the full solar eclipse, a disc-shaped craft appears over the city, hovers for over 30 minutes. 17 people on the ground recorded it on home video, and that's never happened before in the history of ufology.
When modern scientists forecasted the date of the historic solar eclipse, they weren't alone. Some believe the ancient Mayas also predicted the exact date of the eclipse more than 3,000 years ago. This Maya calendar made another startling revelation. It predicted that on the day of the eclipse, a new age of enlightenment would begin. It's referred to as the prophecy of the sixth sun.
The legend of the sixth sun, the new sun, signified by the great eclipse that just occurred, speaks of an opening of knowledge. The sixth sun indicates precisely the moment of its arrival.
Strangely, on the day of the eclipse, something did arrive in the skies over Mexico. Hundreds of those home video cameras that were shooting the eclipse got something completely unexpected. UFOs, unidentified flying objects, all videotaped by hundreds of different people. So far, more than 110 home videos have been verified as containing footage of unexplained craft.
To believe in a city with almost
2 miles deep. So, every once in a while, some mysterious creature is found. Most of the time they're small, occasionally they're large, but there could be almost anything down there that we simply haven't seen.
Scientists thought the coelacanth had been extinct for 70 million years. Then in 1938, the fish was found. Here was a fossil suddenly brought to life. In 1982, a U.S. Naval Research sub dove on volcanic vents a mile and a half below the Pacific. They discovered 2 black alien animals who thrive.
Home video was respected dentist Dr. Marco Antonio Rosas.
The people are afraid of the appearances of the UFOs. The people actually like the idea and feel benefit
air in the midst of a sighting. Both human eyes and radar instruments have observed unbelievable aerial
And the acceptance of the phenomenon by government officials has made even the most reticent eyewitnesses willing to come forward.
Speeds up to 16,000 miles per hour.
Front page, top banner line now. So you found out, so what?
Darling,
12, Houston. Go ahead. Pete, as best we can tell, looking at things down here on those slaw panels, if we weren't imparted any great amount of delta V, like anything more than 1 or so feet per second when they separated, your slaw panels would probably only be about 300 miles away from you right now. That could be true, but gee whiz, when we turned around, I saw one of those slaw panels leaving the area at a high rate of speed. It looked to me like it was leaving us pretty rapid clip, like it got a lot more than a foot per second or so.
Now, where the misinterpretation comes in, I think it's an honest misinterpretation on the part of many UFO buffs, is that at one point Conrad says, well, could these have been our panels? I don't know. When I turned around, a high rate of speed. Well, he was referring to the fact that the panels flew off the day before when they had separated from their booster stage and turned around. And that was the turnaround.
Phenomenon.
Oh, people and lead.
I've lost the battle.
Foot to head.
The near collision of a UFO with a United States Army helicopter piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Coyne and his crew.
A trained pilot
while flying over Mansfield, Ohio at 11 p.m. on October 18, 1970.
Perform a tracking task while being accelerated. Now, what does that mean? 14 G is an acceleration of just about 300 miles per hour per second. So if you were starting from rest and being kicked at 14 Gs, and it would certainly feel like it, at the end of 1 second, you're going 300 miles an hour. At the end of 10 seconds, you're going 3,000 miles an hour.
Beyond anything that I'm aware of that we have today. Most scientists look at these things as not that these are phenomena that violate known physical laws, it's just that they're phenomena that...
Pursuit of the object. A few moments now.
If these craft do defy the laws of physics as we know them, could they be alien spacecraft? From an enlightened civilization, as some believe. The sightings continue to this day, and there is a growing grassroots movement working in Mexico to find out what or who is patrolling their skies.
UFO experts who conduct serious research have
around and turns around, and then it starts coming up the mountain range.
Absolutely nothing to this.
UFO, or at least
This Air Force base here in Roswell, New Mexico, was the center of a controversy back in 1947. Over 40 years later, still remains unsolved. Records of a mysterious craft were found on a remote, allegedly stored here in Hangar 84. To this day, there are many who believe it was a UFO.
And in South America, the heavily populated city of Sao Paulo has had hundreds of sightings by thousands of people. These flaps have prompted researchers to try to find a
to have been larger than the Eastern Airlines plane, and
who studies this soon becomes almost desperate to understand a pattern or to impose some purpose.
And from an FBI memorandum dated March 14, 1949, comes this report. Flying discs are believed by the Air Force to be man-made,
a perfect reflection
of
the full moon.
And that as much as 4 years ago, it was learned that some type of flying discs were being experimented upon by the Russians.
About his UFO experience that he became part of a delegation to the United Nations that tried to encourage the U.S.
country from a northerly direction and returned in the same direction, indicating a strong possibility of coming from
Roswell Army Airfield captures flying saucer.
19th, 1952. Senior Air Controller Harry G. Barnes at National Airport in Washington, D.C., picked up 7 slow-moving objects on his radar.
Private industry working extensively on classified government-sponsored.
What's the matter? What is it? Can I help you?
Nothing's the matter. I don't need any help. I just want you to leave.
I know I shouldn't have stayed here, but I couldn't give up that easily.
Give up what? What we never had?
Same unknown objects were on their radar scopes as well. Barnes called the Pentagon, and another pair of jets came howling over Washington. But now the UFOs remained visible on the screens.
What makes a good sky watching area, for one, is a good field of view.
I know, but I figured one day you could settle down.
Settle down, that's a good way to put it. Settle down like mud in a pool.
Ideally, you'd like to
Bridge on Wednesdays, cocktail Thursdays, PDA Fridays.
You know I
can't give you this kind of stuff, Linda. Go home and find someone else.
Larry, what's happened to you?
Have a relaxing evening out under the stars, and then...
It was not hoaxed. He had told no one in the base camp where he intended to hike that fateful day.
Lights in a perfect circle gliding and performing maneuvers in the sky.
Nor, in my opinion, could any natural phenomena account for these spots on our radar, end quote.
You couldn't tear it, couldn't break through it. Later on, with a 16-pound sledgehammer, you couldn't break through it. Extraordinarily strong and extraordinarily
Listen
light.
to this account by a Roman soldier written in 98 AD.
About this long, about a half-inch high.
A burning passed over the sky at Rome. It sparkled from the west and passed to the east. The Roman soldier's description of that burning shield matches very closely what was photographed in Salt Lake City by Mr. Lauritsen in 1972. On September 30th, 1870, the London Times published this article. The object was elliptical in shape with a kind of tail. It crossed the moon from one side to the other in half a minute.
The Inspector General of the Air Force notified all air base commanders that flying saucers...
Alien culture, and they are doing something underground. They're using the natural magnetic anomalies to disguise...
How to recognize the UFOs, how to report them, and how to handle fragments of them.
Aliens
Slowly but surely, the nature and extent of this remarkable phenomenon has become public knowledge.
Do you realize how that sounds?
I don't like the idea just simply because it is so outrageous. Then I would have to also add some of the photographic data that I have that shows, at least in one particular case, a UFO going up at a 7-degree dive right down into the ground, what appears to be.
This modern film seems to fit another ancient account almost exactly. There appeared in the sky a brilliant object like an iron bar, long and wide as half the moon. For 15 minutes it hovered motionless, then suddenly the strange object began to rise in spirals.
Just about everyone in Pine Bush has seen a UFO. In his barber shop, Butch Hunt hears a lot of stories.
About 60% of the people around here, I think, have seen something. And some talk about it and some don't.
About them, whether it is all nonsense or whether they represent something very, very real. 3 facts stand out, 3 facts which no one can deny. The first is that UFO reports exist. Secondly, that UFO reports come from...
And we just got out and...
Another feature that intrigues Meldrum is the way the creature swivels its entire upper body. It's the same way great apes with thick upper necks have to move when looking back in mid-stride.
So the fact that all of these features act in concert and each time...
This magnificent scientific puzzle, the UFO phenomenon, we need to approach it with a truly open mind so we can explore all possible avenues of explanation.
Among those who claimed to have seen UFOs was Senator Barry Goldwater, who said, quote, "Flying saucers, unidentifiable flying objects, or whatever you want to call them, are real," end quote. Astronaut Gordon Cooper said, quote, "I believe these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting this planet from other planets, and are obviously a lot more technically advanced than we are here on Earth," end quote. Prince Philip of England is a flying saucer fanatic. He meticulously charts all important saucer sightings on a gigantic wall map in his private study at Buckingham Palace. General Douglas MacArthur was the supreme commander of all Allied forces in the South Pacific during World War II. He believed in UFOs, and even commissioned a report that was over 20,000 pages long. During one of his last speeches to the cadets at West Point, he said, "Gentlemen, the next war will not be an international war, but an intergalactic war." He assumed that not only were there UFOs from another planet, but that they were hostile. One fall evening in 1969, Georgia Governor Jimmy Carter was preparing for a speech in the little town of Leary, when he spotted a bright object in the western sky. Carter describes his experience.
As he got
There were
nearer,
about
something
20 of us standing
happened that made
outside
his
of a little,
companions panic.
Restaurant, I believe, a Pascu lunchroom. And
it was hovering
kind of a green
here,
light appeared
just
in
below
the
the tops of the
sky.
trees.
This was right after
And
sundown.
it was about 25 feet in
got brighter and brighter.
What he
And
saw
then
was a
eventually
bright
it was
object
clear.
hovering in midair.
Didn't have any solid substance to it.
When I got up about here,
$200 billion worth of fuel.
crouched down behind a log,
Would use the U.S. power
and I could hear a
consumption
sound.
for 1 million years.
Kind of
I think perhaps
a very
most
strange
diplomatic
mechanical sound.
One can say is the
I
laws
was
of
kind
physics
of
do not
wrestling with the idea of being so close.
but the laws of economics in some
Hopkins has been researching alien abduction.
That we were threatened.
Is a firm believer.
From outer space, from another.
It all sounds
investigated by a host of researchers.
Differences between us at all?
After leaving the White House, Reagan admitted to having seen a UFO while he was governor of California. He was aboard the governor's plane at the time.
When his companions returned to the scene, they found no sign of Travis.
And
He
described
maintains
it.
that he blacked out and came to inside a string.
Or a sensation of levitation. Patients will actually describe saying that they are looking down onto their body.
I have two people that I've never met describing this exact same examination of their head being opened up, something being done to their brain, and being put back together again.
They opened my back. I knew my back was open because I could feel. It was almost as though a slit had been drawn down my back and across to the side, and they had opened a flap of flesh and tissue.
Whether the reports come from adults or children, men or women, most of them follow similar patterns.
There's a bright light that shines in
Just wanted to say hi. We're hitting that halfway mark. As you know. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate your eyeballs. I know it's a weird art form to do this glitch art video jam, but I'm really happy that you're along for the ride. This evening we are looking at various different types of UFO VHS, so I hope you enjoy it. And now I will shut my trap and get on with the show. Okay?
Consistent drawings of triangular objects were made by people scattered across the region. When authorities compared the sketches with eyewitness photos, the circle of evidence was complete. During this
spokesman or the project spokesman, they are simply following orders to explain away all UFO sightings as quickly as possible when they become public. And
very praying mantis-like. I remember being on the table with my head turned away, not wanting to look at this creature. And then when I looked at him, I just recognized him as the one that I hated.
In a few cases, subjects claim to see hybrids.
He later became director of the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena, where he questioned many governmental agencies about their
second thought.
Part of the abduction phenomenon is that there are reproductive procedures carried out upon them.
I've been shown children. I've been shown babies. I've been asked to hold children and babies. I've been asked to give these children affection. And these children aren't alien children, and they're not human children. They're somewhere in between.
I had a woman who had been to the doctor, had an ultrasound done. Her husband was there. Everyone observed at 3 months a healthy fetus. The next day she wakes up screaming they took it. Is so upset her husband takes her back to the doctor. He does a pregnancy test, finds out she's no longer pregnant. They do a DNC, there's nothing there.
The most humiliating thing that happened to me is they put a cylindrical sort of thing over my genitals, and it made me have an orgasm in a second. And I really feel like I'm one of those few men who knows what a woman feels like when she's raped.
I've been on a table, and I've seen something removed from my body that I will call a fetus. Baby
Travis
was
Wall.
so small I couldn't believe it could live on its own. I remember putting my finger in the arch of its foot. I was afraid to look at the face. I was afraid to see what it looked like.
There seems to be an enormous interest in the emotional side of this, too, on the part of the aliens. They want us to hold these odd little children, these babies. They want to see how a mother will hold in love a child, things which to us are instinctive.
The abduction phenomenon begins usually
involve contactees or those persons who claim to be in personal contact with UFO entities, usually through metaphysical or occult means. Close encounters of the sixth kind include injuries or
I was laying in bed, I opened my
resulting from a UFO
gray,
close encounter.
standing there looking at me. And all I could really remember were those dark eyes.
One of the greatest waves of UFO sightings in modern history came in 1965, with more than 500 cases reported during the summer months alone. One such case was near Ann Arbor, Michigan, where 50 people and 12 police officers in 3 counties reported having seen objects flashing across the pre-dawn skies. That evening, 87 female students at Hillsdale College near Ann Arbor watched an object flying around and flashing bright lights for a period of about 4 hours. Life magazine said, "Call them what you will, flying saucers, unidentified flying objects, or optical illusions, they are back again and seen by more people than ever before." Last week, the manifestation seemed almost to have reached the proportions of an invasion.
It was something else.
One of the most important and controversial UFO sightings in U.S. history occurred in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania in 1969. To this day, many researchers who've investigated this sighting believe it is a model for how our government maintains secrecy and disseminates disinformation about UFO sightings. Kecksburg used to be just like a lot of other small villages in western Pennsylvania. But in 1965, Kecksburg lost its anonymity when it became one of the world's most famous UFO landing sites.
I happened to look up in the sky and I seen this red fireball.
It sure wasn't a meteor, because I've seen them fall before. I never seen any of them with blue lights on.
And it looked like it made a turn and come back again. And when it come back, it seemed like it went down.
It was December 9th, 1965.
Roswell is now a civilian airfield. But for Air Corps veteran Walter G. Haught, it seems like only yesterday when he was summoned to the office of his commanding officer.
No windows, there was no doors. It was big enough for a grown person to stand up in.
It had like Egyptian writing, like backwards writing on it.
Stars and circles and dashes and lines, things like that.
It looked like an acorn.
It was really weird.
Well, some claim the UFO wasn't the only thing to arrive that night.
It wasn't too much longer. Down through the woods come 2 gentlemen. The one gentleman,
and the release that he wanted me to put out and hand deliver to the foreign media, in essence, stated that we had in our possession a flying disc. It was being flown to Higher Headquarters, 8th Air Force in Fort Worth by Major Jesse Marcel, who was our base intelligence officer.
While admitting it had recovered a UFO, the military never made mention of any alien bodies.
About the size of a Volkswagen.
That truck.
But over the years, several airmen stationed at the base have testified that alien remains were held under tight security in this hangar.
In 1969, the United States Air Force was in charge of investigating UFO reports. The first study, established in 1948, was called Project Sign. Its conclusions were that UFOs were real and estimated them to be interplanetary craft. The Pentagon rebuked the report, calling it science fiction fantasy. The next report, called Project Grudge, was established in early 1949 and would proceed in secrecy. The critics of this investigation complained that the Air Force wanted to control all research on UFOs and that its mandate seemed to deny or explain away all sightings. Project Grudge did not last long and was officially dissolved in December of 1949. However, there had been many recent UFO sightings in New Mexico, so the Air Force launched a new study known as Project Twinkle. An observation post was set up in New Mexico and was armed with cameras, telescopes, and other optical equipment.
in my own mind couldn't visualize
and after a year of
Jesse Marcel, Major Marcel, the intelligence officer, making that big a blooper that he wouldn't know
the government began
weather balloon from something else, nor would Colonel Blanchard have not known that it was not a weather balloon.
This was followed
this
by
was
a
quite
boom
a
year of over
revelation.
1,500 reports in 1952. The Air Force then established a task force.
Nearly 50 years later, government officials insist.
A woman working in a radio station in Albuquerque, New Mexico, started to transmit on a news wire the story of Major Marcel's recovery of a crashed flying saucer. The FBI interrupted that communication with a statement. An official Army press release was put out announcing the capture of portions of a flying saucer. Major Marcel escorted the wreckage on a B-29 to Carswell Air Force Base. The press was waiting for him, but he was told not to say anything by his commander.
Project Blue Book was terminated in 1969. It concluded that little, if anything, has come from the study of UFOs, and that the least likely explanation of UFOs is the hypothesis.
Tell them about it, and I couldn't say anything. Okay, men.
On the evening...
New Mexico, this was Sandia Base up in Albuquerque. Nuclear weapons-related base, even now...
Radar in the aircraft and on the ground confirmed the unidentified flying object about the plane. Using a slow-motion freeze-frame technique, the incredibly clear contours of the huge craft can be seen. The cameraman and reporter reckon...
Skeptics, and these include the people who own the land and some very substantial...
But these creatures were not friendly and fired a tracer bullet over their heads. And when they kept on coming, he fired directly at one of them. The creatures then all disappeared into the woods, and the glowing object disappeared from the field instantaneously. UFO researchers as well as a state trooper were called in to investigate. When they arrived, the people there told them that Stephen had been growling like an animal and flailing his arms. His own dog ran toward him, and Stephen attacked the dog. Stephen then collapsed, and after a time began to come to his senses. The entire group commented on the nauseating, sulfur-like odor that was present.
UFO phenomenon would confine itself almost entirely.
Or in other UFO cases, sure, if we had the
Egyptian account, some 1,500 years before.
Think it is?
Late in the 1970s, startling evidence of possible alien encounters emerged in the form of strange circular patterns on agricultural land. Every summer, more and more of these mysterious circles appeared on crop fields overnight. Speculation grew that the circles were the result of nocturnal landings by UFOs. Scientists and the media descended on the countryside as the number of crop circles multiplied.
There's a flattening. They're actually lying flat on the ground, like this one here, and these along here, look.
Yeah.
They're flat on the ground while there's others growing up right
That's
again.
right. Only in the ring.
Yes.
Over the years, the crop circles evolved from simple designs to elaborate glyph-like symbols. Some theorized they were extraterrestrial messages. A new branch of UFO study would seek to decipher their meaning. By 1993, the mystery had become a national obsession. But then two men stepped forward and admitted they were the perpetrators of an elaborate joke. Under the cover of darkness, using the simplest of tools, they had stomped their way into history with a spectacular hoax.
I'm Dave Chorley, this is Doug Barr, and we are the two people that have created the crop circles in 1978 through to today.
We started doing the patterns, and last year we did the first pictogram at the bottom of Cheesefoot Head, and that caused quite a sensation. And since then, the furor's got more and more and more. People from overseas coming over because it's something that's, even away from the circles, it's more and more important, you see. And they're just scratching their heads. They're still scratching.
Which trailed them closely for 3 complete orbits around the globe. one of their cameras captured 20 minutes of incredible motion picture footage of this encounter. According to a previous mutual agreement, the Russians forwarded copies of the film to the United States to be analyzed. Unofficial statements from NASA state
the validity of the UFO witnesses. Ufologists know this and have spent many years collecting.
These are sketches of alien abductors made by their victims.
Russian cosmonauts on their...
Most report being confronted by UFOs emanating bright and paralyzing lights. Others claim to have been abducted from their cars and homes. When they return, they're unable to account for their whereabouts for hours or even days. Abductees.
That incident concluded that Cherbakov had acted calmly and rationally. But 12 days later,
some people who claim to have been abducted exhibit round depressions called scoop marks, as if a layer of cells had been surgically removed from their bodies. Others suffer long cuts and straight-line gashes.
Then suddenly, I saw a ball in front of me, about 20 degrees to the right.
he watched the object for several seconds. Then, as it came toward him, Cherbakov tried to radio the base. The light from the UFO was blinding.
Watch the object on the gear there. They saw it approach.
In the back of my head, I began experiencing warmth. I felt as if someone was...
It was only the first of many such cases. Every American
controlled by someone
since
other than
Gordon
me.
Cooper has also been approached by unidentified
The reddish-yellow object started maneuvering around the aircraft. For several minutes, it kept up with the jet's airspeed.
They remained a little longer. In 1965, Major Edward McDivitt photographed one of these objects near...
42-year-old assistant building contractor in Washington, D.C. He provided this interview in hopes of...
Relative to his own airplane.
Clearly shows a bright, egg-shaped thing which leaves a visible trail from its propulsion.
Of cases of pilots.
Both in the ring soil, the ring's roughly 10 feet in diameter, and in the inside and outside the ring in the control samples. He ran tests. First he ran a seed germination test. The ring soil wouldn't grow anything. The normal soil the
General
seeds
Douglas
germinated.
MacArthur said that this confrontation...
He ran a moisture absorption test.
Cherbakov's jet failed. The instruments indicated a fire on board, and the cockpit filled with smoke.
This voice explains, as this light projects
With
off
the
the
commander
side of the ship,
because the plane was still above the
we're
residential area.
hypnotizing.
My altitude
There's no
began
need
to
be
drop
afraid.
rapidly.
You just relax.
I had to pull the plane out of a
And we are going to
nosedive.
communicate telepathically.
Chris's teenage encounters triggered forgotten...
Was rescued an hour later by a military helicopter. While officials combed the wreckage of the jet, Cherbakov was examined at a military hospital. An intensive 3-day interrogation followed.
The interrogation was conducted with a sense of total distrust toward me. Right from the start, they told me that the first, the second, and now the third incident is all yours.
Fine. And they said, well, you come with us, Chris. All I saw was a ramp. It looked like a metallic ramp that entered a doorway, and they put me on this table, and they clamped my skull into like a vise of some sort. I remember I just couldn't move, and I saw this contraption. It was metallic, and they clamped it firm. I could not move. And they rammed something up the back of my head, and it hurt like the devil. I was screaming. And they packed me up and walked me out of the ship. And I'm running back home.
By 1992, stories like Chris's had become so widespread that a special conference was convened at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to investigate alien abductions.
voice of Discovery pilot Colonel John Blaha, speaking on a secret NASA channel.
Pilot. Subject. They don't know what. Relating what was going on. There was a change in the individual.
Anybody can fabricate. The question is, was he fabricating? And he struck
stories. These people are
fabricating, whatever.
Imagined or seen or something, but we never.
Maxime.
Evidence.
Sometimes. This is much more suggestive of a parallel reality than, let's say, visits from some faraway planet, in which case we might expect them to stick around for a while.
The British journal Flying Saucer Review was established in 1955.
Their ordeal began on a drive home from a family get-together.
And all of a sudden, we were hit by that bright light, just a bright light. That came from nowhere. I couldn't see the road. I knew I was moving. I looked over at him and I told him I can't see the road. And that's the last of my memory.
My recollection is my mother let go of the steering wheel, and at that point I reached over and grabbed it.
I can't remember going home. I can't remember the next day.
Like many abductees, memories of intrusive alien surgery began to haunt Joan. A year later, an accident would reveal some extraordinary evidence.
I hit my head on the fireplace, and I was out unconscious for about 45 minutes. I woke up and made it to the phone and called my parents, and they came and took me to the hospital. And they x-rayed my head.
Suspecting, I suppose, a skull fracture,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, but there was no skull fracture. It was fine. But the doctor came running through ER yelling, "How did you get this metal in your head?" Well, I had no idea, neither did my parents. I've never had a head injury to where I could get metal in my brain.
The radiologist report indicates an oval metallic object of unknown origin is lodged in the parasagittal region of the woman's brain.
They made it home without further incident, but in the days and months that followed, they experienced...
They've threatened people and intimidated people. They've spied on UFO groups, infiltrated UFO groups, spied on researchers, compiled dossiers. Their response is bordered on paranoia.
They are fantasies. How do we explain the radiologist report? UFO researchers do share some common ground with the academic establishment. Just north of Boston, Massachusetts, the Billion-Channel Extraterrestrial Assay, or BETA project, is an ambitious scientific search for extraterrestrial intelligence. A joint project of Harvard University and the Planetary Society.
Say it was my height, or just a little taller than I am, and I'm 5 foot. They were bald, no hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, and no earlobes, no ear, we could say. Very large eyes, very small flat nose, thin slit for mouth.
Betty Hill said that they were most interested in human sexuality and that they communicated through a form of telepathy that sounded like a voice loud and clear inside their heads. Bud Hopkins has written several books on UFOs, including Missing Time and Intruders. He is one of the foremost experts on abduction cases, otherwise known as close encounters of the fourth kind.
And now we've come to the conclusion that abduction...
Conducted Project Blue Book. Staffed with just 3 people, it studied 12,000 UFO sightings. All but 701 were explained to the military's satisfaction. And the group that remained unexplained?
It does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency.
Stryber claims to have been abducted by alien beings on more than one occasion and wrote of his experiences in his best-selling book, Communion.
I've had, since I wrote Communion, over 55,000 letters from people around the world who've had this similar things that think they have happened to them, and we still get about 200 a week.
The Intruders Foundation and the Fund for UFO Research show that 1 out of every 50 American adults, 3.7 million people, indicate that they may have had an abduction experience with an unidentified flying object.
I remember my mother was taken in a Jeep, and that I was there with a UFO. There was a beam of light that came down, and I was beamed onto the ship.
These experiences sound crazy. It sounds impossible. It is impossible according to our physics, but we often use hypnosis to help flesh out all the recollections.
A top scientist, Dr. Leo Sprinkle, conducted a 5-year study of 82 persons who reported UFO experiences. Most of them were able to relive the experience through hypnosis, and all suffered severe psychological disturbances afterwards. They claimed to have been taken inside spaceships and examined by humanoids who communicated telepathic messages to them. Dave Hunt is an investigative journalist and has authored 18 books. His research and consulting expertise takes him around the world.
Cal State University, Long Beach. And again, I forget the names of the scientists there who were working on this, and this is a number of years ago now. They did research, and they took people at random. And unless you're going to say everybody's been abducted, they took people at random and who had no indication they'd ever been abducted. And they hypnotized them, took them into a deep state, then suggested that they were being approached by a UFO, asked them to describe it. Their description was the same as the others. They suggested, you're being taken aboard, or what do the entities look like? And they came up with similar descriptions, and then when they're taken aboard, what's happening to you? I'm getting them.
In 1986, they announced that evidence of alien life forms is embedded in its surface.
Maybe 40, but you're looking at seats that are, 18 inches off the ground, obviously made, for something smaller. It certainly wasn't made for children to play in.
Lazar says there were 9 spaceships in all, and he claims to have seen one fly.
It began to lift off the ground almost silently. There was a hiss sound, like a corona discharge if you hear around high voltage systems, accompanied by a faint, it probably would have been brighter at night, a faint blue glow around the bottom. As the craft approached about 30 feet, 20 feet, something like that off the ground, that corona discharge disappeared. The sound stopped and the craft stood there silently and slowly drifted over to the left and then to the right.
The government denies they're testing alien craft at S4. Lazar no longer works there and nowadays spends his time working on one of his hobbies, jet car racing. He alleges that after he went public, security officers at the base threatened his life. He also says that his employment and military service records have disappeared. Despite repeated requests, the government can't find them. The subcontractor who hired him for the job at S4 refuses to comment. But a few clues support Lazar's contention that he is a scientist and that he has worked for the government. This W-2 form indicates that he had been employed by the Department of Naval Intelligence. Before his stint at S4, Lazar claims to
indicates this.
I'm a hypnotherapist.
Oh, very
interesting. So I
record of him, but his name does appear in a laboratory phone book from that time. Reporter George Knapp was able to track down a few of Lazar's colleagues who could confirm parts of his story. But when they talked to Knapp, something strange happened.
One after another had visits from government personnel who basically intimidated or told them to back off, followed them around. There didn't have to be any direct communication where an agent says, you keep talking to this guy, you're going to end up in a river. The message was very clear.
Since Lazar's story broke, Area 51 has become a hotbed for UFO sightings.
You see that? It just zipped to the left. See it again?
While our cameras were there, a bright light appeared in the night sky. Utterly silent, it seemed to float below the mountaintops. Analysis of our videotape proved inconclusive. Those who might know the answers aren't talking.
I've been covering organized crime in Las Vegas for 10 years, dealing with mob hitmen and mob informants, people who have been in the witness protection program. The fear that is generated by this UFO subject for people who really know about it far outweighs the kind of fear that the mob inspires. I mean, people are more afraid of our government than they are of organized crime.
I am exactly sure of what I saw. I know what mainstream science is like. I know where physics stands. I know all of that. And this is an extraterrestrial craft. This technology is hundreds and hundreds of years in advance of us, and that's the end of that story.
The people we've heard from in this report believe that they have had close encounters of the first, second, third, even fourth kind. Skeptics charge that they're mistaken, that they're misinformed, or at the very worst, just plain crazy. But are we, the human race, so conceited as to believe that we are alone in the universe?
Of his spiritual nature with meditation. Man is now in the transitional period before the dawn of a new age. With peace, love, brotherhood, and understanding on man's part, he will see a great new era begin to dawn. In his book, Flying Saucer Pilgrimage, Brian
Notice the
Reed
interesting shape
summarizes his
and the
findings in this
sort of
statement.
hood ornament there up at the
From
middle.
our analysis, the teachings
This next
of the
picture was
space
taken near Rouen, France, by a French military pilot 4
Oriental philosophy by sea.
miles away. Same shape, same hood ornament, obviously. This picture is one of 3 that were taken near Santa Ana, California, by Rex Heffner, the state highway department. He was driving his van. He had a Polaroid camera on the seat of the car, always did, in the seat of the van. Saw this object, took pictures from inside the van, first out ahead of
extraterrestrials.
You can see that here. We can enlarge that first one, sort of a hat with the dome on it. Then 2 pictures taken outside to the right, taken from inside the van, but through the side door window. This is Santa Ana, California. 3 years later, and 7,000 miles away, includes Romania. They have another set of 3 pictures. There were 3 witnesses to this one, 2 people watching the guy take the pictures. They were analyzed in Romania, again in England, published in one of the better journals of flying saucer.
Denied to ordinary mortals.
After what happened to me, the communion experiences, I decided...
Lifetime. And now...
The workings of evil in the world. There seems to be a sort of machinery behind it that is far beyond just the accident of human life.
You can literally hypnotize a person, tell them that there's a cat in their life. Hear it, purr, they will pet it and feel it. It's not physically there.
See, in large number 5, and I think that region around the object is an ionized air plasma related to a magneto-aerodynamic propulsion system. The next picture is from Hawaii. The object's in the upper right-hand portion. You notice the palm trees and the hula girls. And here's a blow-up of that same frame. Hawaii. Here's one from Yungay. Picture. Still.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for watching. This is the end of our session. I hope you enjoyed it. It definitely was an interesting one, that's for sure. What do you guys think? Is it actual UFOs that are the drones covering the East Coast? Or do you think it's our own government? That is the question. What are they? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But this has been a thing that's been happening for time. A very long time. Alright, so, thanks for watching, and have a good night. And God bless the aliens. Alright, have a good night. We're going to end on purple. We're going to end on purple. Here we go. Hold on. Here we go. Purple, purple, purple. We love you.